discontinue funding to the Irish Deaf Society's National Advocacy Service for Deaf People called Deaforward to see how local deaf people are affected by this funding cut. I'm joined from the Cork Deaf Association by their manager, and that's Gerrie O'Grady. Good morning to Gerrie.
Good morning, Patricia.
You're welcome. I'm very well. You're welcome to the programme. I suppose, can you start by outlining, Gerrie?
Good morning, Patricia.
You're welcome. I'm very well. What this service is, this Deaforward service, or what was this service?
Well, I mean, it's of grave concern to us because, as the Cork Deaf Association, we're a standalone service, if you like, but all within the deaf sector, we all sort of work together. So the Irish Deaf Society, it's a very deaf-led service. They provide a broad range of support for, if a deaf person wants to access support to contact schools, to contact banks, pretty much anything that you want to do in society, they would support you to do if you're a deaf person. Their information provision has been second to none. So really, they're very, very deaf-focused, and they're fluent sign language speakers, which is a very, very important point. So it's been a huge shock, really, to the whole deaf sector that the government hasn't really recognised this is a very unique service. And actually, one of the ministers only a few short months ago said, no, this is going to be recognised as a unique service and protected as such. So this is a huge shock.
So it's at times they would almost be like a translation service. I'm thinking of deaf parents going into a school to discuss a problem with their child, a parent-teacher meeting. Could they bring somebody from this service? Would that be typical of what would happen?
Yes, that would be if you needed support. To access any of those services. Because if you think about it, for the majority of the deaf community, sign language is the first language, and English would be a second language. So it's like me, I'm conversational Irish. I cannot imagine going to speak to my daughter's school or to the doctor, and to have to do that through a language that I'm not comfortable in. So it's hugely important to have the appropriate support to be able to be an equal participant within society.
I'm thinking of one that would be a very serious one. A hospital appointment, if you needed to go see a consultant, for example.
Well, that's an ongoing issue, really. I mean, that's huge because we still find it shocking that within such a professional environment like hospitals, there's a real lack of deaf awareness, Patricia, there, that we constantly have to say, no, it's not good enough that you're relying on lip reading to convey very serious medical information. So, I mean, that's a whole other issue.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if you think about where the deaf community are at today in 2014, it's very sobering. I mean, you have 80% of deaf adults have literacy levels of 8 to 9-year-olds. Deaf people are 4 times more likely to be unemployed and twice as likely to suffer from mental health issues. There's something seriously wrong here. And it doesn't have to be that way, because we know that if deaf children receive the same support as hearing children, they can achieve the same outcomes. So there's something wrong.
Any idea on the numbers of people who were using this service?
Oh,
approximately
5,000. Approximately 5,000 could be up and above that.
As many as that.
Could be up and above that.
As many as that. And did the funding cut, Gerrie, come out of the blue? It was public funding from the Department of the Environment. But did the cut come out of the blue?
It really did, because I mean the funding had. It really did, because I mean the funding had been meant to end in 2013, and it was extended for a year, but it's been going for 11 years. And there was a certain level of expectation there. And because there was a reassurance given that, no, this is a unique service and we recognise that. So it was completely out of the blue. And, it's like you have to remember too that this has come only 6 short months from another huge blow to the deaf community. And that's when the bill to formally recognise sign language was rejected by the Shannon.
I was shocked by that. I was shocked by that. I thought that was going to go through as I thought there would be no problem with passing that. But just explain that for the deaf community, how important that is. They were trying to get their Irish Sign Language recognised as a language.
As a language, I mean, because you have, we say in the Education Act in 1998. It's given some form of recognition as an accommodation to the disabled in inverted commas, but it's still not recognised as one of our indigenous languages of Ireland, and that's very, very concerning. And so if it was given legal recognition, if it was considered to be, yes, this is one of our official languages of Ireland, it would have changed things immeasurably for a deaf person. All of a sudden there would have been more of a focus on making things accessible, interpreter regulation, less of an ad hoc sort of provision of services. So it's really, like, the argument that was put forward against it was, oh, well, this is putting the cart before the horse and we need to improve deaf services first, which to me, like, to a lot of...
God, that's a bit of an ironic statement, and then they cut Deaf Forward.
They cut Deaf Forward. But it's a specious argument anyway, because it's, I mean, for an awful lot of people...
Deaf Forward.
They cut Deaf Forward. But it's a specious argument anyway, because it's, I mean, for an awful lot of people, that's sidestepping the issue, and for the majority of deaf people, this isn't so much a disability issue as a civil rights issue. And, you know, the sense really is that people are not being allowed to be equal citizens of Ireland. And I remember at the time and how huge a blow it was when that bill was rejected. And our chairperson, Tom O'Brien here, who's the first deaf chairperson of the Cork Deaf Association, and he turned to me and he was quite emotional, and he said, I wanted to be a full citizen of my country.
And why shouldn't he be?
And why shouldn't he be?
Do you know, Gerrie, in other countries, do they recognise their sign language as official languages? And why shouldn't he be?
And why shouldn't he be?
Do you know, Gerrie, in other countries, do they recognise their sign language as official languages?
It varies.
Does it?
It does. It varies. But even in Northern Ireland, they do.
Do they?
It varies.
Does it?
It does. It varies. But even in Northern Ireland, they do.
Do they?
And so we're kind of one of the sort of the worst, really, I guess, because an awful lot of places, more and more places, are recognising it as an official language, and it does make a practical difference and a symbolic difference. And, like, to be honest, Patricia, there's a classic false economy in a lot of the arguments that are going around, because, you know, the government can either invest in making all the citizens equal or spend money dealing with the fallout from not doing that. Your increase on social services, and there's a sense really that somebody is balancing a book that's right in front of them and they're not looking at the long game.
And this cut to the Deaf Forward, I mean that. And this cut to the Deaf Forward, I mean that this service. That's purely austerity. It was purely cost saving, is it, on behalf of the Department of the Environment? Because it's not that this service wasn't working.
Exactly. Well, what they've said they've done is that they've looked at sort of all the services that were provided, and they said that, oh well, Deaf Forward is doing this and it's a valuable service. However, we feel that could be provided by national organisations or other services in existence. But I mean the figures that I gave you at the start of the conversation, about 80% of deaf adults have literacy levels of 8 to 9.
That's shocking, actually. I have to say.
Shocking. And we see that all of the time. You know, and it's, I think...
Is that getting better, though, with the younger generation coming up? Is that getting better, though, with the younger generation coming up?
Yes, it is. I think there's definitely a change, and you know... Yes, it is. I think there's definitely a change, and you know, we've had pretty exciting news recently that there's sanctions for a preschool for deaf and hard of hearing children in St. Columba's in Douglas. That's great. We've been campaigning for that for a long time, and St. Columba's and Michelle Cashman there has been fantastic in really working hard to make that happen, because the earlier that you get in with the supports, the outcomes can be the same. There is no reason that we have to have these statistics in existence. And, you know, I think everybody should be outraged. Everybody should say this is unacceptable. This is not the Ireland that we want to have. And money it shouldn't be, I mean, was it a good enough argument not to give women the vote or not to abolish slavery? You know, we have to really look at this. This is, as I said, for an awful lot of people, this is about civil rights, and this is about why are deaf people being continually disempowered and not being... I think there's a real lack of political understanding about what the issues actually are.
And this is going to make them feel further outside of society if you know, if they don't have this service available to them.
It is, because on a practical level and a symbolic level. I mean, practically you have what it means on a day-to-day basis. I can't access Deaf Forward, that's not there. But also symbolically, what are the government saying? They're saying, well, we're not going to legally recognise Irish Sign Language, and then there's this gradual erosion of the support services that are there. We've been subjected to over 15% funding cuts over the last 5 years. It's an uphill battle. deaf person, there are so many obstacles out there. And it's to work within this sector, it's heartbreaking. And when I see things like this happening, it makes me so angry and so sad that this is where we're at. This is where we're at in 2014.
Okay, we've got a new Minister for the Environment. Okay, we've got a new Minister for the Environment. Are you hopeful?
We are very hopeful, and we're asking him to make it a priority to restore the funding. And we've asked, you know what's one of the best things though, if you can imagine that there's a silver lining, is how deaf people have stood up and said, this is unacceptable. And deaf people who've never engaged in any sort of political activities are writing to their TDs, and saying, no, this is not good enough. And they're asking the TDs, their local TDs, to make, to approach the new minister. And that's been, I suppose, the one positive is everybody standing up and saying, not good enough.
And I know I had an email in from Senator Mark Daly. There's a group of deaf people going into the Senate next week. They're going to be on the floor for the Taoiseach's questions.
Yeah.
And they're actually looking for they need Irish Sign Language interpreters.
That's right. And the whole idea behind that is just to kind of highlight that there's, a deaf person has a right to be there and to watch those debates going on, and to be a part of the government. And so why shouldn't they be? And so that's what we're asking for. That's what Mark Daly is asking for, and the Irish Deaf Society, that interpreters are in place so that deaf people can participate. And I think it's a great idea, because it's only when people see that sometimes in practice.
Yeah.
Because there's not malice there. I don't think it's a malice issue. It's a lack of understanding.
Yeah, and I know Senator Daly has written to the Ceann Comhairle requesting. Yeah, and I know Senator Daly has written to the Ceann Comhairle requesting that both houses of the Oireachtas will have the ISL interpreter in place next week, because the deaf community will be attending the proceedings. So that will draw attention to it as well.
I think so.
Which is great. So fingers crossed, because I'm trying to. Have you any idea on how much? There's probably isn't a lot of money involved in this, is it?
Well, there was 25. There was 25 organisations, and it was 1.2 million overall. That's really, in the greater scheme of things, between that many people, it's not an awful lot.
It's a drop in the ocean when you look at the amount of money. It's a drop in the ocean when you look at the amount of money that's spent in all of the various government departments.
Exactly, and like I say, there's kind of false economy arguments where they're kind of saying, these services can be provided by other services. What about these are people who speak fluent sign language? Is a deaf person going to contact another service that doesn't have fluent speakers? Then you've got interpreter costs. Then you've got all these extras. It does show that there's not really a great understanding there of the issues.
Okay. All right. Listen, Gerrie, we leave it there. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Patricia.
And thanks for joining us. We'll keep a close eye on this story, and it would be great to be able to announce that they reversed the decision.
Oh, please God.
But in the meantime, thank you for joining us on the programme. Bye-bye. That is Gerrie O'Grady. In the meantime, thank you for joining us on the programme. Bye-bye. That is Gerrie O'Grady. And Gerrie is the manager with the Cork Deaf Association.